right. So today we're going to jump into the really fascinating world of vibrational essences. We're going to explore what they are, the theory behind how they supposedly work, and what they're intended to do.
But first, let me ask you something. Have you ever walked into a room and just felt a certain vibe? You know? A kind of energy you can't really see, but you can definitely feel it. I mean, think about it. A room right after a super cheerful party, it just feels light and happy, right? But that exact same room after a more somber get-together might feel heavy, kind of sad. Same four walls, same furniture, but the feeling? Totally different. So what is that? Well, that lingering feeling is what's known as residual energy. It's this idea that the vibrations from an event can kind of hang around in a space long after everyone's gone home. And this concept, it's really key to understanding what we're talking about today. So how does this whole residual energy idea connect to vibrational essences? Well, let's dive in and take a look. Vibrational essences, and you might hear them called elixirs, are basically liquids that are said to hold the energetic imprint of something. Most of the time, that something is a flower or crystal, but really it could be anything that has its own unique energy. Now, this process is often compared to homeopathy, and it's important to note that homeopathy itself is a topic of scientific debate. Why the comparison? Because the final essence has little to none of the original physical material in it. See, it's all about capturing the energetic imprint, that unique vibration of the object. And you know, this idea isn't brand new. Way back in the early 1920s, a Dr. Edward Bach started creating the first essences that were sold commercially, called Bach flower essences. You've probably even heard of his most famous one, Rescue Remedy. It's a blend of 5 different flower essences, and it's still really popular today for its intended calming effects. Okay, so this all leads to the big question, right? How are these essences supposed to work? Well, the whole theory behind them is all about something called vibrational frequency. Here's the core idea. Everything in the universe, and I mean everything, living or not, is made up of tiny particles that are constantly moving, constantly vibrating. And this idea isn't just applied to physical things, but to thoughts, emotions, and even words. And since everything is vibrating at its own special speed, the idea is that everything has its own unique energetic fingerprint. I love that phrase. It's a really cool way to think about the distinct energy of a person, a place, or even an object. And these frequencies are kind of grouped into 2 camps. First, you've got your high frequencies. These are associated with things like positive emotions, positive thoughts, plants, and other things you'd find out in nature. And then on the flip side, you have low frequencies. These are linked to things like negative thoughts, processed foods, and illness. The belief here is that if you're stuck in a lower frequency for too long, it can lead to imbalance, or dis-ease, as in a lack of ease in the body, which could show up as mental or physical issues. Now, it's really important to point out that these concepts of frequency affecting health aren't backed by mainstream science, but they are totally central to this theory. So if you want to capture one of these high-frequency fingerprints, how do you actually do it? Let's get into the process of how they're made. Okay, it breaks down into a few main steps. First, you take a substance, like a flower or a crystal, and place it in water. Then, you use either sunlight or moonlight to infuse the water with the energy of that substance. After that infusion happens, the mixture gets preserved, usually with a little alcohol or vinegar, and then it's stored in dark glass bottles. This first batch is called the mother essence. All right, so we know what they are, we know how they're made, but what are they supposed to do for you? Let's talk about the intended benefits. So the big goals here are all about your emotional and energetic well-being. We're talking about things like balancing your body's energy, clearing out blocked emotions, maybe even releasing trapped feelings from trauma. The idea is to increase clarity and peace, create a sense of calm, and just generally reduce stress and that feeling of being overwhelmed. It's all about working on a subtle level to help shift your energy to a higher frequency. When you boil it all down, the whole point is to help a person shift away from those negative patterns and, in a way, just hit the reset button on their emotional and energetic state. And that's a wrap on our look into vibrational essences. You know, no matter what you think about the topic, the core idea of frequency leaves you with a really interesting question to chew on. If everything really does have a frequency, what vibrations are you tuned into? It's definitely something to think about.